What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I am your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset, behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. So here we are, guys, on episode number 46. And our guest today was supposed to appear on last week's episode number 45, but there was a bit of a scheduling clash. So last week when I was talking about ESG and impact investing, it was actually International Women's Day. And so what I've had to do is move this to this week, but I'd hoped to be having a conversation with a lady who knows a thing or two about the real estate industry, Miss Helen Chorley, who is now actually a bit of a TV celebrity. She's on Sky, on the Sky channel. She's got a show with a couple of other property experts called Property Elevator, which, for those of you who are not familiar, it's a kind of Dragon's Den or a Shark Tank show, only it involves property kind of developers pitching investors for investment in their deals. So we're going to get into all of that, and we're also going to get into her career before property, which is quite interesting for me. I remember one of my favorite films when I was a young guy was a film called Wall Street with Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, and it was this kind of crazy investment bank, two telephones hanging out of your ear, everybody shouting and screaming to buy shares and sell shares and all this kind of stuff. So Helen was actually a part of that whole thing for 11 years as a sort of person working on the trading floor in JP Morgan. And she talks about that. She talks about why she left that and the importance of health and mindset and all that kind of stuff. So it's a great episode, and we go into an awful lot of detail and all this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go and spend too much time here at the outset. So without further ado, will you please welcome Miss Helen Chorley. Helen, you're most welcome. How are you doing today?
Jolly good, thank you. It's a lovely day here in Malta, so making the most of the sunshine.
That was my first question: is where does this podcast find you? You're actually in Malta at the moment, yeah?
Yes, I moved here full time a couple of years ago. I haven't spent a winter in the UK for a long time, and I was spending so much time here that it just made sense to move over full time. So yeah, just right by the sea, overlooking the sea. Here.
Oh, lovely.
We're having a bit of a gale actually today, so if there's some noise, that's what it is.
And how much time do you spend in the UK?
Well, up until kind of the craziness of this year and last, I was back and forth quite often, a week here, a week there, a week here, a week there. It was pretty crazy. So to be honest, when all the travel kind of stopped, it was a slight relief for a while, but now I came back to Malta in August and I haven't left.
Right.
So
nice.
So for me to be in one country that whole time is really quite unusual.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into all that shortly, but I thought for the benefit of the audience who may not have heard who Helen Chorley is, let's just give a little bit of a backstory as to who you are in your kind of what's brought you to where you are today.
Sure, absolutely. Well, today I'm a property development investor. I invest in other people's deals. I'm one of the angels, the only female angel on the Property Elevator TV show that was on Sky, shown in the autumn. And we're due, fingers crossed, to record another one this year. Heavily involved in property. I'm going to be a judge this year for Property Investor Awards. I'm a contributing writer for Property Investor News magazine, and I'm a co-founder, it's closest to my heart, I'm a co-founder of Property Sisters UK, which is a support, a group, a community for women in property.
Wow, busy lady. So and tell us your kind of early day stages, like you went to, whereabouts did you kind of grow up?
Oh, so going right back, as you can probably hear, I'm northern. I'm from in between Liverpool and Manchester. So actually, I have the worst accent because I've got the worst bits of both of them. So Yeah,
And
and all my family's still up there. So
okay, yeah. No, I was trying to place it because us Irish guys don't always know exactly what the accent is when we're speaking to people. And tell me this, in terms of university, did you do anything that kind of led you towards property, or was it just this kind of a basic enough kind of education in university?
I've always been kind of really into numbers. I had kind of 10 bank accounts by the age of 10. I'm quite kind
Wow.
of numbers and mathsy and geeky like that. So for my A levels, I did maths, further maths, economics, and French. And actually, I really liked economics, understanding kind of the way the world worked, the real life world worked, the practical side of stuff. So I went on to do that at university. I did politics, philosophy, and economics at Oxford. So I had a whole broad spectrum of things to study there.
And then what did you do after that? You went into banking, you were telling me.
Yes, actually. So I didn't start in property. I started in investment banking. I worked on the foreign exchange trading floor at JP Morgan for 11 years. So that was that was interesting and fun times. But as you can imagine, it was quite adrenaline fueled and high stress.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. I mean, for anyone, anyone who's young and doesn't like, nowadays, trading floors look quite different. So back in those days, as far as I can remember, you had people in yellow coats and blue coats and all these and screaming and shouting with pieces of paper, a little bit like the film Trading Places.
Yeah, that was the live floor. So we had our own kind of foreign exchange trading floor in JP Morgan. Oh, actually, all the banks did at that time. But the electronic trading systems were only just starting off. They were being kind of trialed. So actually, it was still when there were deals to be done, or big deals to be executed. It was everybody, a phone in each hand and speaking and shouting down mics, and all stood on our feet. And it was crazy, but it was exhilarating. And you can imagine as a 20-odd-year-old, having never been in London before, it was, I was living the dream.
I had friends that went from university in Dublin over to work in, I think it was, I can't remember, but there was a couple of those big banks similar to JP Morgan, and they started working there. And I can remember the lifestyle was, out nearly every night of the week. They had the expense accounts, drinking, basically entertaining clients and all. So that was the kind of lifestyle that you were kind of in back then. But the guys, they didn't spend that long before they kind of felt like that they had to move on, because it is kind of a difficult lifestyle to maintain for any length of time if you want to stay healthy, I guess.
Yeah, you're on kind of, the whole time you're on the trading floor. Actually, I chose the trading floor because it actually, at least it closed. So I had friends that went into M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and they wouldn't have a holiday. They wouldn't have a weekend off for 6-8 weeks as long as a deal kind of was going on. So at least with kind of the trading floor, we passed the books over to New York, and, there was a cutoff. They did shut.
Right.
But yeah, but the whole time you're in, and I would start work at 6 o'clock every day. One day a week, it was my turn to kind of do all the research and understand what happened in Asia overnight. So one day a week, 5 o'clock, but you're on the whole time, because you have to be there ready to be at the end of the phone and have those answers and execute a trade as soon as the client rings in. And I joked with my mum, because it happened over lockdown 1, but I was so busy in between Zoom calls, I ran to the loo and ran back to get on the next call. And I said, God, I haven't done that for a long time, but that's how it was. That's how it was on a trading floor. It was literally you run and you run back.
Urgency.
You can't get off the desk. You eat at the desk. You are on from the moment you arrive to the moment you leave.
High stress, yeah. And did that, and I understand that had an impact on your health eventually.
Yeah, it did. It did eventually. That caught up with me, and I basically had adrenal fatigue. And I tried to push through it as those A types do.
You think that, this can't show any weakness, it's going to keep on going. Like,
exactly. I can do this. I can overcome this. It's fine. It'll be fine.
It's all in the mind. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, but no, I had to leave. Actually, it was very interesting timing, because it was 2008, by the time kind of my friends and my parents kind of intervened, they were just like, you have to leave or else you're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna something to say really serious is gonna happen. So I went off with sick leave in early 2008 and basically just realized there was no way I could go back to that kind of lifestyle. And then as it transpired, well, we now know what happened in the rest of 2008, don't we? And my fiance was at Lehman's at the time, so that made 2008 even more interesting.
2000, yeah. I mean, Lehman's brother. That was the moment when my situation. I was involved in a big deal down in Spain, and I had committed to the deal. I had actually paid over monies, and after all of that, Lehman's collapsed, and I was holding this kind of baby basically, and I had 30 million of debt that was kind of committed, but had not been drawn down yet. And it was subject to various conditions being met. And it didn't look like we were going to be able to meet the conditions. And so the bank that I had committed, I was paying all these fees to this bank, like for non-utilization of 30 million. And then when we went to actually get the money, they wouldn't release it to us. And I mean, it was just the most stressful environment I can remember in my life, and so I don't want to ever go back to that again. It's just too much.
It was game changing, and it was all bets are off, wasn't it? It was.
I think a lot of people used 2008 as a kind of a time to reset their lives and their kind of priorities and stuff, because it just too many years of too much, the fuel kind of being thrown on the fire every day. And it's great making lots of money, but it's the impact it has on your health and stuff can be pretty devastating. Tell me this.
I spent the next 2 years after that basically in bed. So I didn't have a life for the
next 2 years. And you're in bed, really? Like it was that bad? Yeah. Okay. So it was a pretty serious illness in your case. Yeah. I was going to ask just, what brought you into JP Morgan? Were there any influences that kind of drew you into that life? Who were your kind of childhood heroes and stuff like that,
Actually, this won't come as a great surprise, but I was very competitive with my boyfriend at the time, and he was a trader at Citibank. We were at the same college, Oxford, and he was a trader at Citibank. But he'd really wanted to get a job at JP Morgan, because JP Morgan at the time was renowned as having the best graduate training program. You got shipped off to New York for kind of a few months it was, and you did this world-class training program. Everybody wanted to be on it, and he hadn't got in, and I just made up my mind. I'm like, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get in, and put my mind to it, and that's what happened. But I found something actually the other day, because I'm in the middle of moving house, and it was a little book, a little kind of Victoria Plum purple notebook. And in it is what effectively looks like an Excel spreadsheet, but drawn out. And
by hand.
By hand, with my dad's signature. There's record of my pocket money and kind of the accumulation and what I'd taken in and out. So I think, I've been kind of like trained definitely to be frugal as well with money from being, yay high. And we had Excel before it was invented on Victoria purple paper.
That's gas. Well, tell me this. You moved then. I mean, obviously you spent some time recuperating, and it was time for a reset. You found, you recovered. Was that the time that you decided that you were going to give property a try, or when?
Yeah. Once I started, getting my health back and having a bit more energy, then what I realized that I'd missed certainly in the the corporate world was my creativity had been stifled. You get there, you do your job, and there wasn't any energy or time or mental space, to be honest, for anything else outside of that. So I tried all sorts. Actually, I went on a floristry course, thought I was going to be a florist. Then I went on a hat making course because I love hats. I think I might have gone on a shoe design, or I was looking into shoe design. I wanted something to express that creativity. but also like I needed like the mental stimulation as well. So I realized that they weren't going to be kind of careers for me.
Yeah.
But what we did at the time, actually, yeah, because of a funny way the Lehman's thing played itself out, we bought a massive house, well, massive for London, zone 1, 4,500 square foot house. And I love like design and furniture and that was my project. That was my baby. That was my life for kind of the next year or two, designing that and making that our own. So that's how I got into kind of, doing up property. And then I tried my hand at being a home stager, helping other people out, which was more stressful than being on the trading floor.
Right. Got
it. So that didn't last too long. It was great. Again, it was that creativity and taking one thing and transforming it. And I loved that. But doing it for other people was, I think I worked out my hourly rate was about £1.66.
Yeah, I can relate. I was an architect starting out, and like working for other clients just wasn't doing it for me at all. And it was the worst thing was chasing the money then afterwards. And it was like they didn't appreciate the amount of work that had gone into this design that you had done. And I remember looking for like an extra 1,000 or something like that. They had spent, 15,000 extra. So I was entitled to 1,500 of an extra fee, and they were squabbling with me over this. And, oh no, we're not paying this. And I remember just thinking, you know what, keep your fee. I'm not going to fight over this. And I just got straight into property, and I just decided I'm not working with clients again. It's too stressful. Especially domestic clients, because it's their home, it's their pocket, it's out of their pocket. Whereas commercial clients, they have a big budget and it's not their money, so they can kind of allocate it a bit more easily. It's not like you're tearing it out of their fingertips.
Quite.
Yeah. And so were you doing this to sell, or were you doing these to hold on as investment properties, or what was the
that was our home at the time,
right.
But with how things transpired, we did end up selling that a few years later. But what I also really had loved, and I'd moved, I can't remember how many times by that point, probably like 11 times. I used to move every 2 years. I just loved finding something that was undervalued, personalizing it and adding value, and kind of moving up the property ladder. So I'd done that. I'd started out with a tiny matchbox of a property in Covent Garden, age like 22 or 23 or whatever I was, and just gradually kind of done that, and had made nice chunks of money along the way. And that one was a spectacular buy, and we timed the market just right, because it was the American embassy. It'd been announced that was going to be in Nine Elms, which is just around.
I remember, yeah.
But the prices haven't reacted. So I just look at everything kind of on £1 per square foot, and I'm like, there's something wrong. This is priced incorrectly.
Yeah.
Like, this is next to a pigsty or a sewage plant, or there's something bad. And actually, it was just a motivated seller, as we would call them these days. So we did beautifully on that. And kind of once we'd sold that, and I'd done some other kind of trades as well, I had a kind of another shift, and that's when I decided actually I wanted to spend more time kind of out of the UK. And I read something. I was looking at how to do property professionally, and I read that it could be passive.
Okay, great.
And I believed that.
Yeah, nice try. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people believe that property is completely passive? Yeah, I know. I see that as I want to get into property so I can basically retire,
Yeah.
I say, put them in the...
That's what I thought. I thought, I'll find this, I'll invest this money, hands off. I set off to Malta, I don't need to do anything. I'll just be there getting paid my return. Yes, not worked out like that.
And tell me, so after the property, I seen that you were involved with Ruth Hobbs in setting up Property Sisters. So tell us a little bit about that and how it gets started. And
absolutely, we've been doing kind of meetups. It's Ruth Hobbs, Carolina Adamczyk, Claire Norwood, and we've been doing meetups from almost the time that we met, which was probably about 5 years ago. And we did one for our birthdays, because 3 of us had birthdays in January. And we just like, at that time, and it's different now, thankfully so, but at that time you'd go to a property meet, you'd walk in and you would be one of two women in a room of 50, 60, 100 men. And it was, even for me, coming from a trading floor background, even for me, it was intimidating.
Right.
So if you're a housewife at home, as Claire had been, rocking up to something like that, a lot of women kind of feel or felt kind of out of their depth. And we were like, maybe we could like all just support each other. And it's not anti-men. God, we all work with men and we love working with men. We know some amazing men in this industry. But women need the support of other women, and to be able to say, did you feel like this? Like, how did you handle this? And it is different. I know it's not easy to say we're different, but we are. And that's where it came from. We wanted to create a community where people could share experiences, to say, oh yeah, that happened to me, or even just, does anybody know a good architect in Dublin, or whatever it may be. And so we kind of formalized that in 2019. And then with lockdown 1, it just kind of took off. We'd actually done a one-day kind of workshop event that was just fabulous in Mayfair. And we had kind of various different speakers. And we just realized, that we were really onto something, and that there was a real need, a hunger, a thirst for this. So yeah, it really took off in lockdown 1, because we were doing weekly Zoom meetings and had different speakers in. And obviously we haven't been able to meet up in person since, but we're literally, we can't wait for when that can happen. I'd fly in from wherever I was for these, when we were having the in-person. I would have huge FOMO if I wasn't there, and I'm like, I'm gonna be there. So.
Well, it's a terribly male-dominated industry, all right, isn't it? And so I can understand. I have 4 daughters, so and I think about those guys thinking about going into this industry, because being in the property industry, you kind of want to kind of pass on to the next generation. But I kind of wondered to myself how they'll find that, given the way it's skewed all towards men, really. So it's an interesting point. So I wonder, will you set up an Irish chapter so that we can have them over here?
Well, I have an amazing friend over there, Laura McLaughlin, who actually it popped up on my memories because it was International Women's Day earlier this week. And that's how I got stuck in the UK for lockdown 1. She put on an amazing evening at the London Real Estate Meet, and just women panelists. We had 3 different panels kind of speaking about different aspects of property, but all women, and the room was packed, men and women, because we've all got something to say. And as I say, we're not the the kind of uber feminist down with men. There's honestly, hand on heart, there's none of that chat in our kind of group. It's just we laugh at you, but we know you laugh at us, and
yeah.
it's just, how do we navigate these things?
Yeah.
We love working with men.
And tell me, Helen, reflecting back on your career, are there any habits or behaviors that have served you very well, and any that you've had to kind of try to kind of put down because they're not serving you?
Yeah, certainly kind of that overworking, kind of type A, it's still an ongoing struggle with me. I tell you, it's something that I do. When I was chatting with one of our members, Kat Settle, we did an Insta Live a couple of weeks ago on this, but meditation for me has been a game changer.
It's funny you say that. I've just been meditating today. All right. Yeah, it is very, very good, isn't it? It's made such a difference to me too.
I think if you are, someone that's on the go, and I have a very kind of active mind, I love and I need mental stimulation, but that can get too out of control. And when you're too in your head, it manifests for me as anxiety. And so the meditation just grounds me. It resets me. And also, I don't just kind of do the passive, like empty your mind type. I do kind of the manifestation and kind of thinking and like creating the future. I love that type as well. So, I went on a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat a few years ago, and literally from that day on, I've meditated every day, and it's a non-negotiable for me.
That's great to hear. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've been trying to do. I find I think we're quite similar in that regard. I overcommit to so many different things, and then suddenly they're all due at the same time and overwhelm. And so I have to actually stop what I'm doing and actually take 20 minutes to kind of do some meditation and just try to kind of come back, with everything settled and okay, now what's the priority? Let's deal with one thing at a time.
Yeah,
But
you have to get out of what I do. I have to get out of my head. And exactly like I mostly listen to kind of guided meditations because I need that distraction for the conscious mind of listening to another voice.
yeah,
That does reground me. I was listening to one just before this.
I listen to, I have the app Calm, and it's that lady, I can't remember her name, but Tamara, I think it is, or something like that. And she has this very mellow voice, and it's like, okay, now I'm ready. Let's go.
It so depends on whose voice. There's a lovely lady I listen to on it's free on YouTube. She has amazing ones. She's Australian, but again, that voice just lulls you into, like, calms those brain waves. Jess Shepherd is her name, so
Yeah.
worth checking her out too.
Okay, I'll do that. And the reason I'm asking this is because I know from my experience, and I'm sure you've gone through the same thing, is that the property industry works in these kind of hectic periods, and then you're waiting for permission, or you're waiting for something to happen, financing or legal or whatever it is. And so in order to keep the kind of the show on the road, I found that I would have multiple deals at different stages so that I didn't have to wait so long for the next stage to come along. Exactly. And the problem with that is, as we're describing here, is that the type A personalities, it's go, 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 and then nothing. And you're like, okay, I got to go and get busy again. I got to do something. And so you end up packing every single sort of moment full of deals. And I ended up, one of the difficulties I had in 2008 was not having one or two deals. It was having 7 or 8 active at the same time. Yeah. And some of them in a construction stage. So you can't end that, you can't get up and sell it or do anything like that. You have to finish out the job. And in some cases, the banks start to kind of pull the plug on the financing. And so it's very difficult to finish a job.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I found as well was actually my fitness. I found that just, every day, non-negotiable for me, a run or some sort of vigorous exercise. And that just kind of like sets me up and gives me the endorphins I need to start the day.
Yeah, that's for me too. I found lockdown 1 really difficult because of that. And actually, I was joining in online classes from Malta, but in the UK.
All right. Interesting.
So yes, exactly. And I prefer to do exercise in the morning, actually, because again, it gets me out of my head. I wake up and my mind's like, have you done this? And have you done that? And what about this? And, is go from the minute. If that's what wakes me up before my eyes are open, is this voice going, have you done that? And did you speak to them? And I'm like, actually get out, get to the gym or get to a class. And that gets me back in my body. And then I more productive.
Yeah, I'm the same. I get it all done first thing, and then by 8:30 or whatever, you can kind of get started on the day. Yeah. I was going to go, like, we've talked about your life before TV, and now you're involved in a television show, and I'm interested to know, how, first of all, how that came about, but second of all, has it transformed your visibility? Obviously, is much improved and stuff. What's that been like for you?
Oh, God. Well, it happened because I was doing a lot more speaking. I only started, I had this nice, quiet little passive, well, not passive, but as passive as I can do in Malta before that. And I started speaking up because what I realized is there's a lot of kind of developers speaking and promoting their stuff, and people who run courses speaking. And that's great, if there's genuine knowledge to share. But nobody was asking, what does an investor want? Nobody was asking, well, nobody was giving an investor's side of it. Because there was stuff happening where, when there were difficulties, some developers would disappear and there was no communication. And it's like, well, that's not okay. It's not professional for a start. And that's not okay from an investor perspective. So I started speaking about, well, this is what investors look for. This is why I would invest in a deal, or why I would choose to invest in a person, which is actually what I do rather than a kind of a specific deal. And it kind of started off that way. And then I was on a panel with John Howard, who's one of the executive producers of the show, and there had been a series 1, and they were planning a series 2, and John asked me if I would join in with that, because he knows I'm active kind of funding people's deals. And like you say, when you're saying, you were juggling 7 kind of construction projects, obviously I'm not the one managing, I invest in the developers, but I have probably 10 deals on the go, at least at any one on one time, because even just from managing the cash flow perspective, it has to be phased like that.
Yeah.
So met John, and he asked me, and that was due to be recorded much earlier, but obviously with the events of last year, we ended up recording that in August, and then it was shown over autumn, winter. And the response was really overwhelming. It was really great. I was really pleased with it from a perspective of, I wanted it to be educational, not just kind of entertainment. Oh, let's watch this and see. But actually, again, really give insight, but useful insight into how different people, different investors approach different deals. And there's Ranjan, there's Paul Mahoney, Nicholas Walwork, John, and me. And because we all have our different preferences and choose kind of different strategies, almost different business models, then we all brought something different to the table. So I hope it was really useful. The feedback that we got is that it was really useful. So so series 3 should, fingers crossed, be being recorded this year.
Brilliant. Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't know what it is, I guess a good description would be, it's kind of a property version of Dragon's Den or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's there's 5 angel investors, and people come onto the show to pitch their deal and get investment and or mentoring from one or more, maybe 2 of the angels. Certainly some deals were done where more than one angel invested in a deal. So but talking about the visibility, yes, that's been a game changer, and I knew that would happen. It wasn't the reason for doing it, but it's been good and bad. It's given me so many more opportunities, which is fabulous. But as you know, once you start putting yourself out there, then you have to be prepared for the trolls and the haters and the criticism as well.
It comes with the territory. Well, it was soon, once you have, I remember I actually had a hater comment on a video and on my YouTube one day, and I can remember, instead of being upset, I was like, hey, I must be doing something right. I've got my first hater, and that's the way I look at it, is like, they're always out there, but you don't see them until you're starting to kind of get some notice or whatever it is,
No, exactly. That you have to be prepared for that. That comes with the territory. And also what comes with the territory is people kind of copying as well. And, that's been a bit frustrating, people taking kind of my IP and passing it off as their own.
That happens every day of the week. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I've seen you describe yourself as a hyper realist. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I used to call myself cynical, and I realized that had just 2 negative connotations. So then I changed to skeptical, and I am quite skeptical, but actually there's optimism in me. I'm not just purely cynical. Otherwise, God, I definitely wouldn't be in property if I was.
Yes.
And I definitely wouldn't be working with the people that I work with. It's what I love. It can be frustrating, but it's what I love about developers. Well, they have this huge kind of optimism and this vision. That creator profile generally on the wealth dynamics. And they have this huge vision, which I'm a trader profile. So actually, that isn't my strength, which is probably why I like it so much.
Right.
But yeah, it's a Ray Dalio phrase, actually. And if anybody's not read the book Principles, do, because I
have it here in my shelf. Yeah.
It's just
great book.
It's absolutely epic. And it's his phrase. And it's about kind of like being real, like take off. If you're an optimist, take off those rose tinted glasses. And then if you're a pessimist, actually, maybe put them
back on.
And hopefully you end up kind of somewhere in the middle. There's a phrase, and it's going to escape me right now, but it's the Stockdale paradox. And then basically it says kind of you have to have that optimism. You have to have kind of belief that you are going to get there for your long-term goal, but you must face what's in front of you and the brutality and the utter reality of what's in front of you right now. I probably done that no service, but look it up. And that to me is what a hyper realist is.
Yeah.
I can see, I'm almost a troubleshooter. I can see kind of problems, or because I'm very risk focused, because I'm numbers and, finance background, because I'm risk focused, I can see what potential problems there could be. And I just think it's wise to prepare for those things.
I think you're right. I think so many people, they overlook that, they kind of gloss over it. And I could remember it back, in 2005 and 2006. I remember being pitched regularly by, different agents and stuff. And they would have these, sheets done, analysis, financial analysis done. And the deal would make no sense in the current market. But they were saying 2 years from now, the rents will have risen, or the capital values will have risen, and you're going to do great, And but you're buying today. And they had this kind of assumption that nothing makes sense today. Like, you're not going to find any deals today if you're looking for something that makes sense today. It's the 3 years out, that's when it's going to make sense. And I can remember thinking, I'm not sure that this is a healthy market anymore, because this was happening every day of the week. You just couldn't find a deal that made sense.
Wow.
Yeah. And from that point of view, hyper realist, I think, is a great thing, because having gone through the 2008 crash as I've done, and I've spoken before about the kind of struggles that I had after that, which were pretty severe. But I think it's a great thing to be talking about, because there's an awful lot of people out there who've gotten themselves into this mindset that, by getting into the property business, you're going to be wealthy, and therefore you can start bringing forward all those kind of things that you want now. So you want to drive that Range Rover, it's no problem, go out and borrow the money from the bank, because you're going to make the money in the future. And I think there's enough gurus and stuff out there that are kind of banging this drum and kind of promoting that. And that's one of the reasons why I came up with, we were talking about before we started recording, this is a business, not a lifestyle. And as I've said before, and I do think it's important, because I think too many people out there are just focused on the lifestyle aspect, and, they want to buy the nice watch and the fancy car. And so they think that this is an avenue to that lifestyle. And really it can be, but it's a slow, steady rise. It's not an overnight kind of a thing. And you've got to have, I think, a passion for property in your blood in order to kind of last through those difficult years, because there can be an enormous amount of stress with this business.
Absolutely. And I think that treating it as a business, I've heard people say, oh, it's my hobby, and oh, I'm so passionate about it and it's so fun. You can't dip in and out of this. It's very difficult to. You're not going to optimize your opportunities, and you're going to expose yourself to risk if you approach it that way. And also something that you said that is really, really critical. I actually said it to somebody. I had a kind of a newbie reach out to me on Instagram recently. I want to get into property, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. I'm like, great, but why? What have you done previously? This and that and the other. Been very successful kind of in their own right in a different area, but didn't have any money in the bank. And I'm like, why do you think, kind of coming into property, why do you think this is suddenly going to be like the panacea? This is going to be, all this money. Why? I'm like, there's a step before that. And it's what you talk about a lot. It's mindset. Unless you change your mindset about wealth and about how to create it and about how to generate and accept it, then quite frankly, you're just going to be another stat in property as well.
You didn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. Something else has to change. If you've not made it or made the millions somewhere else, like, why do you think this is going to be? Something has to change, or you have to have such passion and such grounded belief
and grit.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. Yeah.
And be ready to ride that. As you and I well know, this is a roller coaster. Strap yourself in.
Yeah. Oh, we can talk about the bad deals all day long. Tell me this: what's the best advice that anyone gave you in respect of property and stuff?
What's the best advice? I think the one that made a difference to me, but I caution to use it because I see this getting people into trouble. But just get involved, somebody said to me, because I'm the type that will sit back, will overanalyze, will, take my time. I am very tortoise, not hare. And my message is normally be a tortoise, not a hare. But actually, I'm the personality type that I needed that little push actually to get involved. So I think the best advice really is to understand yourself. And if you're a one that just dives in, without kind of thinking and preparation, then maybe you should stay on the side and be a little more tortoise. But if you're a little more, if you are tortoise by nature, then perhaps be a little more hare.
So understand your nature and basically make sure that it's not working against you.
Self-awareness it is an absolute game changer. When you understand the programs that you're running, why you do what you do, and we all think it's because we make all these choices because we're these empowered individuals. We're running on programming that might not even be yours. It might be your parents, which is probably their parents, which is probably their parents.
Yeah.
And we're all running these programs, and when you start to understand that, then you can understand kind of where your weaknesses are, where your blind spots are, what your strengths are and why they are, and who you should work with. So personal development, mindset, that is a fundamental part of any business and particularly property.
Yeah, understanding how you process information as well. And I actually talked about one of my episodes in this podcast. We talked about cognitive bias and the fact that you can have all of this pre-programmed into your brain, and it's not even necessarily your parents. It's just humankind in general, just human nature, that you automatically do certain things. And it's like, do you sell a property when you're losing money? Most people say no, but it actually might be the right thing to get out now rather than let it fall even further. And I've been through that emotion where you just refuse to accept that the value has dropped, and you end up just chasing it down and down and down, further and further. And there's so many of these things. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of kind of that trading mentality as well, that you have to know it's called a stop loss in trading.
Yes.
You just have to know there's the point at which, yes, you're going to have to take some pain, but it's probably going to be better than kind of holding on and waiting. You also have to know when to take profit. And that's what people get wrong in trading. Is they're watching it, they're riding it up and up, and they think this upwards trend. You're seeing it in Bitcoin at the moment, aren't you? People are riding this like it's never going to end. It is going to end. So take those profits.
I'll tell you an interesting story. Just I've been reflecting back on this. I have an email, myself and my friends, back in 2011. We discovered Bitcoin, and we were actually talking amongst ourselves about grouping together to buy some Bitcoin. And at the time, the price was $89. Okay. And now it's what, 42,000 or whatever it is. And so I just reached out to the guy who I was emailing, and I just sort of said, I found this, what do you think? And we were going to put, I think there was going to be 8 of us that were going to put 5,000 each into it. So it was going to be 40,000. And today that would be worth 20 million or something like that. Yeah. And it's just insane. But what's like, people are saying, my God, are you so, distressed and stuff? And I just sort of say, well, actually, no, because the reality is if we had bought at 89, you can be damn sure we would have sold out at 200. And then you'd be like, no, I can't believe it's gone to 300. And you would refuse to get in because you wanted to go back down to 200 before you get back in again. And this is the games that play out in your head. Is nobody would have hung on from 89 all the way to 42,000 and have the full 20 million today. Nobody would have done it. You would have gone through the point where, what is it, Mount Geox or one of these kind of servers were hacked a couple of years ago, and a load of people had their Bitcoin stolen. And then not so long ago, it hit 20,000, and it dropped down to 3, and people would be jumping out of windows because of that, And so it's, you have to just understand your mentality and the fact that you're never going to get it right. You just have to get in at the point where you can.
No, and be able to manage those emotions around it. And that's certainly the advice that I give to people kind of getting into property. If they just want to kind of be an investor, don't put kind of all your whole chunk kind of in one deal, because if you do, you're emotionally invested, like overly emotionally invested.
Yeah.
I started off really small. I started off using various crowdfunding platforms, and literally my first deal was £2,000.
Okay.
Very relatively kind of like small amounts, just to kind of learn, dip my toe in and see what happens, such that, when things go wrong, then it's like, well, it's not fabulous, but I've learned a lot. And,
Yeah.
I'm not lying awake at night, like worrying or,
Yeah. Well, it's not exciting, but it is steady progress that you want, and you're not risking the whole portfolio over one asset or one stock. I wanted to ask you, in terms of books and things. You mentioned Ray Dalio. Have you any books that you recommend that you think are particularly good for people understanding this kind of stuff?
There is I don't really read property books, but actually, as we were talking about kind of trading and watching the Bitcoin and everything, there's a great book that is really good for understanding your own and kind of the wider attitude to risk. And it's a book by a lady poker player called Thinking in Bets. Annie Duke, gosh, I had a brain blip for a moment. Annie Duke, Thinking in Bets. And again, it's about poker, and it's about asymmetric risk, which actually we don't necessarily know that we are, but that's what property is about.
Right.
And it's really applicable, the mindset and what you're dealing with and why you make decisions based on kind of the information or the data that's in front of you. So I actually think it's really applicable to property. So that's a really good one. The other one that I always recommend, actually, there's my two favorites are more kind of mindset and more like chill out books. One is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's not an easy read. It's quite, we were talking about self-awareness. You want to deep dive into self-awareness, read that book, because you're going to come up against all your programming.
Okay.
And it's not comfortable. Look, I'm getting twitchy. But it's game changing if you want to be a better version of you. Right. And then the last one is the one I read over and over and over again, because for me it's like reading a meditation, and it's Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Okay.
And it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to read. It's very philosophical. Again, it's introspective, but it's the most calm book I've ever read. I love that.
Nice. And I mean, in terms of staying up to date with what's going on, when you're based in Malta, and I saw that in your profile, I saw that you also spent time in Bermuda. Is that right?
Yes, I do. I've got very good friends and their kids over there. So yeah, I'm there. Well, I was before lockdown, before all of this. Yeah, I was there every year as well. So I'm long overdue a trip. I'm missing them incredibly. But yeah, I seem to have a little thing for little islands, don't I?
Yes. Yeah. It's a nice way to be. All right. I mean, and the great thing about, technology and stuff nowadays is just the way that you can actually take off and spend half the year on the other side of the world and work remotely. Yeah. And that's something you've obviously embraced in a big way. I noticed that, sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's what lockdown did, because that was how I was doing things, how I was operating before. It was like, can we jump on a Zoom? But it's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Can we just wait till you come over? And now it's like, now it's, it's default, and that's just standard, isn't it? And I'm like, oh, welcome to my world. This is what I wanted, like people to be doing this more, such that I didn't have to be in the UK as much. So
that's really worked for you. Yeah, I remember I had a Zoom account before the pandemic, and my the people that I work with were questioning sort of, what do we have this stupid Zoom thing, Gavin? Why are you what have you got this for? And then suddenly, oh, okay, now we get it. And tell me this. I noticed that you're an advisor to a prop tech company, and it's called Aparo. Is that right?
It is, yes. So it's they've coined the term React company. So
I see that, real estate and computer technology. Yeah,
exactly. So it's very, for somebody that's very untechy, which I am. It's an interesting choice, but I love it because again, it's a whole new world for me to understand. But yes, my friend Toby Wild is one of the co-founders of that, and it's an algorithm based company identifying stressed and distressed assets. And also now they have non-discretionary funds that they go out and to market with as well. So did a huge raise on that last year, and they are just going from strength to strength, which is fabulous to see.
Well, that's what I just wanted to ask you about, is that, you describe yourself as non-techie, but what do you think is going, any predictions for the real estate market going forward? I mean, but around technology and all of this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I did an interview with Toby for our Property Sisters YouTube channel in January, and he has some great things to say, and we're seeing it already. If you saw, I think it was even just last week, Lloyd's announcing that they're going to be going into kind of the residential market for themselves as a group, not just kind of providing mortgages. And Toby was talking about that previously, and I just think we're going to see more and more of that, like the institutional lenders kind of going into the resi market. Actually, what we have been seeing, particularly in some auctions recently, which has been interesting, is the nature of the assets, and particularly commercial assets that some of these institutions hold, has really changed, hasn't it? With last year, and with, well, you know this more so than anybody else. With the challenges of kind of retail and kind of commercial in general. And so managing those assets has taken on a whole different challenge. And I think a lot of institutions don't want that, or don't see, institutions look at things more on a relative basis, as I do with my own kind of portfolio. And so it's not just the kind of the overall return you're looking for. Well, where is kind of the best return?
Yeah.
And so that's been really interesting to see that kind of shift away from commercial more into resi. And I think that's definitely going to be that's going to continue for sure.
And then the other side of it is, just to kind of go on what you said there, you've got the big funds that they have these portfolios that are weighted in certain ways. And what's happened in the last, 12 months or so is that logistics and warehousing has become hugely valuable. Retail and shopping centers and all that has gone way down. And offices, obviously, there's a question mark on that. And then residential has, shot up. And these funds are all completely out of balance now. I mean, what they would have had, so much allocated to each of those sectors. Yeah. And then suddenly it's, we've got far too much now in the logistics side because of the values of it, and everything is gone in the other side. So they're going to have to rejig their portfolios. And that's going to actually mean that assets are, dropped basically on the market for sale. And it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's that rebalancing of asset allocation. Exactly.
Yeah. We're coming near the end of the talk, Helen. One of the questions that I ask all of my guests is the advice that you would give yourself today, your younger self, if you had an opportunity to speak to yourself, as a 20-year-old Helen. What advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, I definitely tell her to start meditating right now. Start today.
But would you have listened is the question. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have got it. I wouldn't have. No, I was too hot-headed for sure to be able to get that. I think it would be definitely get into personal development and definitely kind of start getting into, self-awareness and understanding what drives you. And I think certainly when I was younger, and still maybe so, a little bit these days, I'm driven or held back kind of by fear.
Right.
And, maybe that's kind of the downside of being hyper realist. I see problems where perhaps there actually aren't any.
and you miss the opportunities.
Yes. So I have definitely missed more deals that I wish I had invested in rather than, I've gone in and I've lost a load of money. To date, I haven't lost any money on a deal. That says to me, I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's pros and cons to that, isn't there? I mean, if you haven't lost any money on a deal, then you might be staying a little bit conservative, but the opposite end of that trade is me, and I roll the dice in a big way, and I paid the price in 2008. Helen, thanks so much for talking to me today. I just was going to say, you've got a number of different platforms that you kind of appear on. How should people look for you or find you if they want to kind of reach out?
Oh, sure. So LinkedIn, I'm quite active on that. Instagram, I'm Helen Chorley Investor. We have a Clubhouse room on a Thursday night talking about helping people pitch better. So I'm Helen Chorley on Clubhouse, and they're the main ways. And actually, we also have the Property Sisters UK YouTube channel, so we're quite active on that as well. So.
And I believe you have your own website as well. So
I do.
helenchorley.co.uk, is that? Yeah. Great. Well, Helen, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Gavin. Total pleasure.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed episode 46, Miss Helen Chorley on Behind the Facade. Thank you so much for listening. As always, my number one ask of you is to leave a review and a 5-star rating. And if you can't do that, maybe you would be able to share the episode out with somebody who you think may benefit from it. In the show notes, you will find various links to things discussed today. And if you have a question or a topic you would like me to cover in future episodes, please connect with me via the Facebook group Behind the Facade Community, or alternatively, you can find me on social media using my handle, Gavin J. Gallagher. And nowadays I'm actually doing some YouTube videos as well. So go and check in over there and maybe subscribe to the channel and help me grow that channel too, as well as this podcast. So lastly, if you want to stay up to date on any events or challenges or whatever I'm working on at the moment, please add your name to the email list over at gavinjgallagher.com/go. And so that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you again next week.